Is the 2.8 litre diesel engine up to the job in the 70 series Landcruiser? That's the big question I've got today in this video. It's been decades since anything called Landcruiser has used 4-cylinder power, and it's been forever since an automatic transmission was offered off the showroom floor in a 70 series. But against that much loved 4.5 litre turbo diesel V8 and 5-speed manual gearbox, is this 2.8 litre Landcruiser still the same hardcore workhorse? We are on a mission to find out, and we've got a full load test and towing test to see how it performs. Our test car is a 2024 Toyota Landcruiser 79 series double cab. It's in GXL trim, and we have the 2.8 litre automatic transmission driveline. This combination is priced from $83,500 plus on-road costs as a cab chassis. So that makes it about $4,100 cheaper than an equivalent V8 model. The 2.8 litre engine, which was also used in the Landcruiser Prado, Hilux and Fortuner, makes 150 kilowatts and 500 newton meters, and it runs through a 6-speed torque converter automatic transmission and part-time 4-wheel drive system. And for those playing along at home, that is 1 kilowatt less than the V8, but 70 newton meters more. Because it's a bit lighter, the 2.8 litre Landcruiser has a 55 kilo payload advantage over the V8 model. There is 1,325 kilos available here. However, you must deduct the 244 kilos for the heavy-duty steel tray we've got here, so you're left with 1,081 kilos. And because of the 7,010 kilo gross combination mass capacity of the 70 series, you are actually allowed to use all of your payload and a 3.5 tonne braked towing capacity at the same time. Changes inside the 70 series Landcruiser are minimal, but at the same time they're really significant in the context of this vehicle. Firstly, we've got an automatic transmission here, and that comes with a different style console. Hold the phone too, because there is literally a spot to put your phone, plus there are 2 cup holders. This is uncharted territory for the 70 series, historically speaking. We've also got an infotainment display here. It's small, very basic, very rudimentary, but it does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It has Bluetooth radio and regular radio, no digital radio, no native navigation there. There's one USB outlet in the infotainment, and that's how you connect your phone up. You've also got a couple of USB-C power outlets in this spec and a 12-volt outlet, so there are certainly upgrades here, but at the same time, it's business as usual in terms of the air conditioning controls, the ergonomics, the way it feels, the way it looks. It's all very similar. You do have a different instrument cluster here in front of you. That's got a cool retro design. People will notice that that is harking back to the 40 series once upon a time, but that also comes with a multifunction display there just on the side. So that brings a bit of functionality the 70 hasn't had before either. You've got a digital speed readout. You can see what kind of fuel you're using. You can interact with some of the driver assistance features that this 70 series now has as well. So it's different and it's new, but it's also same old, same old. The second row of the 79 series Landcruiser is unchanged in comparison to the pre-facelifted model. And by modern standards, it's cramped, it's uncomfortable, it's lacking in features, and it's even missing top tether points for baby seats if you wanted to throw some in. So if you thought having 4 less cylinders and a fair bit less capacity under the bonnet would give you a bit of room for accessories, you would be a little bit mistaken in this regard. There is a bit of room around the place, but it's not exactly an empty engine bay with this 2.8 litre engine in here. Now, there's a few things to point out here. It's got now a water-to-air intercooler, which is mounted on top of the engine. No need for a bonnet scoop anymore, which is quite interesting. The V8 does still keep the air-to-air setup, although it's got a bit of a different venting setup these days with this new look. We've also got raised fenders here, and as you can see, we've got these brackets which are put in there just to help strengthen things up, I suppose. Some people say it's not a very good look to do it like that. I don't personally see much of an issue with it. Why Toyota have done this, I think probably because it looks cool when the car's got this big raised front end, but also to make space for an increased cooling system in this 70 series. You can see the radiator here is tilted on an angle. That would be to help with packaging as well, but a taller bonnet means they can raise that radiator up out of the way of things like sticks and mud and bogs and all of that sort of thing. And also, one big advantage of this 4-cylinder in comparison to the V8 is the location of the alternator. It's not way down in the bottom. It's not way up at the top either, but it's definitely in a better location and it's going to eat a lot less mud. Now, for those of us who love to stay looking beautiful, there are no vanity mirrors on the inside of the 70 Series Landcruiser. There is a rear view mirror, of course, but I suggest you step outside and walk around to the front of the car and have a look here, because on the front bumper is this incredibly reflective slab of chrome. It's huge and it works really well actually as a mirror. I've been checking myself out there all day, but I don't know how long it would stay looking so good. Because it's on the front of the car, it's going to get stone chipped surely. The first part of our test was loading up 850 kilos worth of ballast at our local favourite, which is Nepean Landscape Suppliers. And with this loaded up, we still had a little bit of payload left over. So people who have driven an automatic equipped 70 Series previously would have spent a lot of money for the privilege of doing that, because Toyota have never actually offered the 70 Series, this modern day one, with an automatic gearbox. And it's a massive part of why this 2.8 litre 4-cylinder 70 actually makes sense. Yes, it's got less cylinders. Yes, it's got less capacity overall, but that's kind of missing the point, because this car actually does better in many respects. I've driven the V8 a lot over the years, and I can tell you that where the V8 feels the best is selecting first gear, releasing the clutch and taking off. It feels great in first, not so bad in second, but once you get into third, fourth and fifth, it just starts to feel wheezy. It runs out of puff. It's got no revs and it's got no real punch. This 4-cylinder unit in comparison feels steady right across the board, and when you get to speeds above 70 or 80 kilometers an hour, this absolutely feels better. It's got lower gear ratios in the diffs, and it's also got an extra gear ratio. This is a 6-speed. The manual has always only been a 5-speed. And because it's an automatic gearbox, you just press the pedal and off it goes. It's definitely churning, working a little bit harder than the V8 would. It doesn't have that same really unstressed nature, but it goes faster, it gets up to speed better, and it holds speeds better as well. The suspension is handling it reasonably well. It definitely sags down a little bit. The 70 Series does have a relatively short wheelbase, especially in this double cab setup, so a bit of weight does tend to go over the back wheels there. You can feel the steering lightens off a little bit. The turning circle is as atrocious as ever. It's all the same things that you would know from the 70 Series since, well, the mid-1980s. Now, big whoop, I can probably hear you say. We've got a ton in the back, but a lot of other four-wheel drive utes can do that, and they're nicer to drive and cheaper to buy. So that's not really the full test. And I do want to put this 4-cylinder to the real test today, and I've got just the thing in mind to do it. We're not finished yet, and the second part of our test was towing, but also with that weight kept in the tray. So we headed over to Jayco Sydney to borrow a 2.8 tonne Jayco Silverline Caravan for a tow test. With this van hitched up, we had a combination mass of around 6.2 tonnes, which is still short of the maximum permissible combination for the 79 Series Landcruiser. But the additional tow ball weight from the Caravan means the payload of the 70 Series is pretty much maxed out. Now, the first thing to talk about with this 70 Series loaded up like we have it now is the fact that you can't do this with other four-wheel drive utes. They might have a 1-tonne payload, they might have a 3.5-tonne towing capacity, but the gross combination mass of those vehicles means you can't use all of them at once. If you do, you'll be overloaded. This 70 Series, you can do it. It's got a maximum gross combination mass of 7 tonnes, so you can get away with it. We're at about 6.5 at the moment. Not fully laden, but the suspension, well, it's getting towards the end of what I would say is acceptable on the road. It's definitely sitting down in the back quite a bit, and while I'm not getting too many big thumps through the suspension, the steering does feel even more light and even more vague than it is normally. So if I was doing this all the time, I would certainly be looking at upgrading the suspension. But the one thing I'm really interested in is powertrain performance. I don't have a V8 here right now, but I have spent a lot of time in V8 powered Landcruisers over the years, and I've got a good gauge on how they perform. And the difference here is that this 4-cylinder engine, it's better. You certainly don't get that same rumble, that same charming soundtrack that you get with the V8. This car, it feels a bit more overstressed through the powertrain. It's churning away, it vibrates a little bit into the cabin and that sort of thing. So it doesn't feel as muscular. But then you look down at the speedo and you're going much faster than you would be in a V8, and you're obviously not doing this with your other hand and changing gears with your feet all the time. You can just press down the pedal and off you go. 500 Newton meters of torque, there's more there. And I think the big detail here, which maybe isn't spoken about as much with this 4-cylinder Landcruiser, is the fact that the diff ratios are different, and it allows you to get this engine working in its peak spot as often as it can. The gearbox feels well calibrated and matched to the engine. I mean, the gearbox has been around in the Hilux and a bunch of other vehicles for a really long time, so it's a known and proven unit, and it's set up really well here. And because you've got that extra 6th gear ratio, you've actually got an engine that isn't revving so hard all of the time. In a V8 Landcruiser, the revs were always way too high, even after 2017 when they updated the gearbox ratios. It was just revving too much on the highway. This gets down to around 2,000 RPM at 100 k's an hour on the highway, and with all this weight, it'll hold that on the flat, no worries. And then once you get to a hill, it doesn't do too badly. It definitely slowed down going uphill with all of this weight on board, but it wasn't too bad. I found that the gearbox was very keen to shift up gears. So if you're going up a hill and you really want to hold your speed, I would select manual mode. There is a power haul mode button here on the dash, which you can use, but it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, to be honest with you. It's more about your foot pressing down on the pedal as hard as it can, and then selecting which gear you want manually with the shifter. And once you do that, there's nothing really wrong with how well this performs. Let me put it this way, you wouldn't want to be going a whole lot faster. So this Landcruiser, it performs better and it is easy to drive, but there are a couple of extra benefits as well. You've got increased payload with this 4-cylinder engine because the engine is lighter. The gearbox probably not, but all in total, it is a bit lighter overall. But you've also got better fuel economy. Now I've averaged 13.8 litres per 100 k's. And that's going off the trip computer in front here. That's unladen, laden and towing driving all in total, which to be honest with you isn't too bad of a number for such a big rig. Now, one thing to talk about, I think, with this 4-cylinder engine is the idea of longevity. The V8, it gets great mileage. There have been some issues with it, oil consumption, dusting over the years. I think no vehicle is without all of its problems these days, but generally speaking, the V8 has a good reputation for lasting for hundreds of thousands of kilometers when properly maintained. Now, is that going to be the same case for this 4-cylinder turbo diesel when it's working hard, towing weights like this all the time, lugging along in low range in the dusty heat and all of that sort of thing? Will it? I don't know. I can't answer that. And well, Toyota thinks it will, but I think the final approval for this 4-cylinder engine will come in time. I think after 10 years of hardcore usage, with thousands of these units out in Australian people's hands day in, day out. So it's only in the fullness of time really where we will find out what this Landcruiser is really made of, and if it will continue that heritage of being such a hardcore, long distance, reliable and durable 4-wheel drive vehicle. So I just want to thank a couple of people for helping us put this tow test and review of the Landcruiser together. Firstly, the Pen and Landscape Suppliers and Jayco Sydney for loaning us this Silverline Jayco Caravan to really put this thing to the test. And also, thanks to Lucas, our video guy, because he's been standing out in the rain with me all day, and sometimes it's not that fun to hang around with me. And while we're in such a giving mood, thanks to you as well for watching this content. We wouldn't be doing it without you. If you do enjoy this kind of stuff, give us a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon as well so you don't miss out on any future videos. But back to the verdict. Does this 4-cylinder Landcruiser cut the mustard? Now, there's one song from Les Claypool that has been popping into my mind a lot whilst driving this car. And the line in particular, he says, "The candle that burns twice as bright burns only half as long." And that's the only real question mark I've got about this Landcruiser personally. Is it going to go the same distance over 10 or 20 years as a big capacity V8 or 6-cylinder? I don't know. We can't answer that until the fullness of time. But when you look at this vehicle, out of the box in comparison to the V8 in terms of performance, value for money, durability, drivability, it's a better ute. It goes better. It doesn't pull at the heartstrings like the V8 does, but it goes up hills faster, it's easier to drive, and it's a bit more convenient as well. And that's not to mention the price, because don't forget the V8, those prices have skyrocketed recently. So if you're looking purely rational performance, this one is the choice. Now, I know which one I would choose, but I want to hear from you, the general public. Would you prefer this automatic 4-cylinder turbo diesel, or would you still stick with the tried and trusted, a little bit slower V8 and manual? Get on your keyboards and let me know in the comment section below.